Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Today, again, it's 21 degrees in the greenhouse, so it's quite a nice day to be honest with you. Unfortunately, the ground's a bit too wet to dig, but we can still get the weeds off the top if you can get on there. But unfortunately, my allotment's a bit too wet to start digging quite yet. But fingers crossed, it'll start to dry out in the next few weeks. So, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. It's at this time of year you need to be getting as much organic material into the ground as you possibly can, particularly where you've got any root vegetables. And this wheelbarrow has really paid dividends because I'm basically making half the amount of trips now from the chicken house to here. So I was really pleased with this purchase. So here's the start of the bean trench. As you can see, it's 2 spades wide. I'm going to come down here, perhaps see it a bit better. It's 2 spades wide and it's around a spade deep. Now ideally I would have dug it slightly deeper than this, but because the ground's quite wet and crumbly, I'm struggling to get any lower than that. And if anybody ever tells you that gardening isn't exercise, then they've clearly never had a spade in their hand, because I'm quite tired now. Anyway, into here I'm putting all household waste. So I've got potato peelings, parsnip peelings, carrot peelings, egg shells, anything like that can go straight into this trench. And basically over the next couple of months, any compost that you've got, rather than composting it in your bins, just put it straight in the trench, and then it can start to break down in the ground. And then when you're ready to plant your beans, you just pull the soil back over the trench and then plant your beans. So basically the first bean will be here, and then the next bean will be over there, and then basically the roots will go down into the compost, and it'll guarantee a really good crop of beans again for this year. So there you go. I've evenly spread the compost across the bottom of the trench, and what I'll do is now just keep layering more and more stuff on top of that for it to all rot down to feed the beans. Now obviously the trench will get a bit bigger. The trench is actually going to come to somewhere about here, but I've not dug this bit out yet because as I explained, I may have some muck delivered here. So what I'll do is I'll start at that end, and then I'll dig along here and dig the rest out in a month or so's time, when I've established if I'm able to get some muck or not. But that's what you should be doing right now. Dig yourself a trench for your beans and start to put your compost in. Okay, even though we are a few months off putting onions in, you'll find that they are actually in the shop at the moment. And this variety that I'm going to grow this year is called Turbo. And you can now get them. I actually bought these from Wilco's for £1.50, so they are really cheap. But the advice I'd give is, if you get them now, you're going to get basically the pick of the onions. Because if you leave it a little bit later, everybody will have got in there and sort of got all the best onion sets out. If you go in there now, you're going to get the bags which with the nice fat sets in there, which are obviously the ones that you want. And in each bag you've got about 100 onions. I'm going to put 4 bags of these in, so I'm going to have about 400 onions of Turbo. Now this is one variety that I grew last year, and Turbo did really well. Last year I also grew Stuttgart Giant, and even though the ones that grew were were really good, I had quite a few onions that failed, and I had to replant them. And basically what was happening was the onion was, the top of it was kind of going all curly. I'm not quite sure what it is, to be honest with you, but it was only the Stuttgart Giant that had that, and the top went all curly, and then basically the onion just started to die off and didn't form properly. So I pulled all of those out, replaced them with some that I'd got in the greenhouse, and luckily the second lot worked all right. So I'm not quite sure what actually caused it, but I know the only ones that I had the problems with were Stuttgart Giant. So even though I must admit the ones that did grow were really nice onions, however with the turbo, pretty much every onion that I put on the ground grew really well. And here's a quick clip of what the onions looked like at the back end of last year, just to give you a quick reminder.
So that's what you end up with. As you can see, I've got 10 strings now with onions on. When you've got bigger ones like these, also you tend to end up with less onions on each string. So if your onions are a little bit bigger, you'll have probably more strings. And these ones are slightly smaller. Obviously there's a bit of a mixed bag there. These are all pretty much the same size, and this one at the end here, those are all the smaller ones.
So the best bit of advice I can give you at this time of year, second week in January, is to, if you can, go and get your onion sets now. All you need to do is store them in a reasonably dry, not too warm place, because you don't want them sprouting quite yet. So if you've got a sort of sort of quiet corner in your shed or greenhouse or whatever, then that's perfectly good. But obviously what you don't want to do is get them damp, otherwise they'll start sprouting, and obviously they're going to be too early to put out until the frosts have gone. So buy them now and then store them somewhere nice and dry and cool, not too warm.
Just a quick reminder about your chickens. At this time of year they are going to be eating a lot more than they do normally, obviously because they need to keep warm. So just ensure that your food is constantly topped up and you've got plenty of water with glycerin in to stop it from freezing. Okay, so I've jumped ahead a little bit because I'm trying to get quite a lot in this video. So basically what I've done is I've cut out 6 pieces like that, which are going to go on the back of the cup, and then these are the arms which will attach it to the centre hub. Now, the way to make things easy for yourself is I've just got a piece of wood. This is the one that I actually used to make the last one. And I've actually got 2 of these. One I use, it's exactly the same shape. It's obviously a hexagon. And if you don't know how to make an hexagon, basically what you do is with a compass, draw a circle round, and then with the compass in the same the same setting, if you go then round the edge of the circle like that with the compass, you'll find that the radius of the circle is exactly the same as 1/6 of the circumference going round. So you can very quickly, with a compass, generate a hexagonal shape. Then what I've done is I've drawn a line from each corner, obviously through the centre, to each edge. And then basically what I'm going to do then is use this as the template to weld the arms together. So on the end of each of the arms, what I've done is I've cut these angles out here, so basically when they all fit together, as you can see, there's the template. As you can see in the middle, they actually fit snugly together, and obviously the next one, this one will go in like that, and then the next one here, and all the way around. So I will make a symmetrical circle now. A symmetrical wheel. Now, as I explained to you, one of the most important things with this is it is symmetrical. The lengths of these arms are not important, and how the cup fits on the end here is not so important. What is important is they're all identical. So when it's in the complete wheel, they're all of the arms are identical to each other. So as you can see from the pattern that I've drawn on there, just get out of the light. By making this piece of wood, what I've been able to do is to make a template for them all to sit into. And what I'll be doing is, welding along here and along here, so I'll make two halves of the wheel, and then when I put it onto the hub, which I'll show you a little bit later on, I'll have two halves, and then I'll be able to sit the hub in the middle of here and then put the two halves together, and then when I weld the final two sides together, I will have a perfectly symmetrical hexagonal wheel with obviously 6 spokes coming off. Now before I do that, I'll be welding these pieces onto the bit which is going to fasten to the cups. Now the way to do this is these pieces are going to weld onto here like that, and so basically if you imagine on here, this piece will be welded on like that, and then the cup will sit here, and then there'll be one more there, and the cup will sit there, and so on going round. Now the way to get these all symmetrical is what I've done is I've got one in the vise, so that's one of the arms which will attach to the wheel coming down, and then that'll be welded onto the part of the arm which will bolt onto the back of the cup. Now what I've done is just very quickly I've tacked, I don't know if you can see, but just down here and here, what I've done is I've tacked a piece of angle iron onto the steel bench, just so I know that every time I put one of these together, that's in the vise and that's hard up against inside the angle iron, that this is perfectly straight, and every time I put a set in, they'll all be the same. So basically what I'll do is I'll put it in there, and then I'll weld along this line here, and then this line here, and then that'll be that arm completed. And I'll do that for all 6. So I'll do that before I weld it together in the centre. So when I put them all together, I know that they're all perfectly symmetrical because they're all the same. Now the way, just very quickly, the way that I put this in, or sort of measured where that needed to be, was by putting a piece of metal into the vise, a nice big chunky piece of metal. I actually use this piece of metal, so I know full well that it's straight. I'll put that in the vise, and then by measuring down, I made sure that that was in the centre of the piece that I'm welding onto here. I know this is a little bit complicated, but I'm just trying to explain to you the tricks and the techniques that I've used or will use to make the arms. Now as you can see, that's there perfectly in the centre, and I know that this is perfectly in line with this piece here. So when I weld each one, then they'll all be in a straight line. So just so you realise, this piece which I'll be welding onto the bottom, that I've drilled 3 holes in, that will be fitted or bolted onto the back of the cup like that. So as you can see, that will bolt through onto the back, and then as it rotates round, and then so the cup will be like that. This is going to be bolted through, and then this piece will obviously be welded like that. So then that will be the complete. So as I explained, the dimensions of these aren't really that important, but just to give you an idea, these are 31 centimetres long, and these holes, obviously that one's right at the end in the middle of the piece of metal, and then these are 9.5 centimetres apart, the hole centres. Okay, so now I've welded the 2 pieces of the arms together. So as you can see, that's the bit that's going to be bolted onto the cup, and then this is the bit that forms the wheel, and that will go in there to form the other 2. There's the other one there. And so basically what you end up with is a wheel that's formed like this. If I can just come out the shadow, stop casting a shadow so you can actually see it. So that's what it'll look like on the wheel, and then the cups will fit onto it like this. So we've got basically the strip will go down the back, obviously that'll be sort of bolted at the back as well, but that'll bolt onto the cup. So as you can see, you form the cup shape like that, and then these bits going backwards. So this will basically spin sort of like that, and then this forms, obviously that's where the wind will sort of pick up the cups and then spin it around, and you can probably have an idea of how big this is going to be now. So probably from the tip of that's probably about a foot and then another foot, so it's going to be something like 4 foot across when it's completed. So the thing to do now is, what I'm going to do is weld these 4 together whilst I've got it all clamped in, so I know that it's right. This is the piece of wood that I showed you with the template on, and as you can see now, looking from the top, there's the actual shape. Then obviously the last 2 will fit in kind of there, and then obviously there'll be another one here to form the that one there, leaving a hole in the centre which will be 25 millimeters across, or just over an inch. Now that's gonna be where the wheel hub of the bike's going to fit in there. So what I'm going to do is weld these 4 together, weld them 2 together, then that'll slot over the wheel hub, or if you want to look at it the other way, the wheel hub will slot in there. Then I'll just meet these 2 up, weld the final 2 pieces, then that'll be the complete wheel. Then obviously I'll weld around here onto the wheel hub so it's all intact. So what I'm going to do now is weld these 4 together. Now I know that they're absolutely perfectly straight and level. Then I'll weld these 2 together, then I'll be ready to construct the wheel. And there we go, there's the completed wheel. So as you can see, I've welded these 3 joints there, and I've welded this one together here. So basically that's what it's going to be like when it comes together over the hub. Then I'll weld down here and down here to complete the wheel. But as you can see, if I just remove these knob grips here, I can take that section of the wheel out, so I can slide the hub in there, and then obviously then I'll bring this one back in like that, and then weld it all together around the hub. So this is the centre hub that I'm going to use out of a wheel. So here's just a bike standard bike wheel off a child's bike, and I'm going to be using this centre part here, and all I need to do basically is cut all of the spokes to get the centre part out. Okay, so there's the hub out of the wheel, with all the spokes taken off. Now what I need to do is put the second piece of wood over like that, which is going to show me exactly where the wheel's going to fit over it, and then the wheel is just going to slide in like that, as I explained. As you can see, that then sits on. You see I can weld around there now. Now what I need to do before I weld it, obviously I need to take off the chrome plate, so I'm welding steel onto steel. But that'll go like that, and I'll just clamp that in, and then I'll clamp the other bit in and show you with it all together. So there you go. So I'll just very quickly put that together so you can see it. So what I'm going to do now is just take all this off again, take all the chrome off the hub so I can weld it straight on, and what I'll do then is I'll need to do a slight amount of fettling just to take a little bit off here so these sit in nice and tightly. Make sure it's a perfect hexagon. Then what I'll do is weld all the way around here. Obviously weld these 2 pieces together, and then weld all the way around the edge. Then what I'm going to have to do to get this piece of wood out at that point, what I'm going to have to do is cut it off, because the only way this will go on is from the top. So basically I'm going to weld it all in, and then cut this piece of wood so I can get it back out again, and then turn the whole thing upside down and weld it again on the other side. So there you go, so there's the wheel all clamped into place. If I do that, you'll be able to see it from the top. And what I've done is I've cut, I don't know if you can see the line there, but I've cut through this already with the jigsaw. The line goes almost to the end there, so I haven't quite cut through it. I've left 1/8 of an inch there and 1/8 of an inch there, so I can just easily break the piece of wood off after I've welded it. Clamped it all in, slightly filed these down just to make sure it all sits in very nicely, and so I'm now ready to weld. Okay, so now you can see I've welded the edges together, and I've welded all the way around, and you can see that, all the way around onto the wheel hub. And so now, as you can see, the whole thing will spin round as it will do with the wind. Obviously it's working on the ratchet at the moment, which is the bit that the chain used to be on, so it's a little bit stiff. But when it's working on the actual, these are the bearings here. You'll see in a minute. I'll put it on them now so you can see it spinning around. Okay, just to bring it away from the wall so it'll actually spin, I've had to put a block in here, but that's not part of it. But as you can see, it'll spin quite freely on the bearings of the wheel. This is exactly why I use the centre hub out of a wheel, because as you can see, one touch and that'll probably spin around about 20 times before it comes to rest. So that's obviously, as soon as I've got the cups on that, it will actually be spinning in the direction it's going at the moment. So if you can imagine a cup on each of the end of one of these going round, then it'll you'll be able to see the you know, sort of imagine the wheel spinning. So that's the wheel finished pretty much. What I've got to do is just to give it a little bit more strength, what I'm going to do is just weld round under there. If I can get in, it's quite tight, and to be honest with you, the weld on there is pretty good anyway, so it's more than strong enough as it is. So what I'll probably do is not bother welding the underneath of it, because I'm going to struggle to get in there anyway with a welder, and I think it's more than strong enough the way it is. So that's the wheel finished. So having had a look at the rotor and sort of had a quick check of it and all that, so I've got one concern, that if I sort of twang one of the ends, there's a reasonable amount of vibration that goes through it. So what I've decided to do is I'm going to put, to make like an A-frame, I'm going to weld some steel down like that onto the arms to stop them from vibrating up and down. So I'll do that now. Okay, so that's with the strengtheners in. So I've welded these pieces in here. All I've done is I've just tacked them at the end, and you know, as it's not a structural piece really, it just needs to hold. So I've just put a couple of spots at that end and a couple of spots at this end, and this stuff's quite sort of thin anyway. So as you can see now, it does still rattle. Obviously, you know, you're never going to get away from that. However, it's you know, these arms now are not flexing anywhere near as much as they were. So with it rotating, it's going to now look like that. So the next stage is to paint this. This is basically finished now. Everything else that goes on the wheel is going to be bolted onto it. So from a metalwork point of view, this is finished. So what I'll basically do now is get some white primer and paint this entire wheel. Okay, so that's the wheel painted all round. So that's the first coat of primer. So what I'll do is I'll give that 24 hours now, let that dry, and then I'll be giving it a second coat of primer tomorrow. Okay, so there's the second coat of primer dried. So what I'm going to do now is paint it with some white gloss, which is for, as you can see that, what it is for metal. So I shall probably give it a couple of coats of that, just to make sure it's completely sealed and weatherproof. Okay, so that's the first coat of gloss. I think I'll let that dry now overnight, and I'll see what it's like tomorrow, but I may well give that another coat before I think it's completely finished. Okay, so now we're going to make the bit that shows you the direction, and basically I'm going to use this part of the frame here, which is obviously where the handlebars go. So the first thing to do is to take off the handlebars, and this whole thing is going to end up upside down. Now the angle that this is hitting that isn't any good for what we're doing, so what I'm going to do is take that off, and then I'm going to cut through the forks there, and that's where the wheel's going to attach to the whole structure. So basically what I'm going to do is cut through there with the angle grinder, and I'm going to take off the handlebars. Okay, so that's it with the handlebars taken out, and that is pretty much the same shape, or sorry, the same size. So a piece of conduit stuff I'll just show you. A piece of conduit will slide in there reasonably well. So if I make the pole that it sits on as a conduit, it'll sit on sort of quite nicely. So it'll be the same as the other one. Now, a quick tip before I take an angle grinder to this to cut this off. When you cut it with an angle grinder, you're going to get lots of swarf going all over the place. So what I'm going to do is wrap masking tape around the top to protect that bearing, and I'm going to wrap masking tape around the bottom to protect that bearing, because what you don't want is the swarf to go inside the bearing, because that'll start to grind and wear the bearing. Okay, so you can see what I'm thinking. That's how it's going to rotate on the pole. I'll just put a bit of conduit in the vise so you can see it rotating. Now, obviously the wheel's going to attach here, so the wheel's going to be spinning this way. So this is the bottom of the wheel, and if you look there I've got about I don't know, probably about 3 inches, best part of the finger's worth. So if you imagine it's going to come out sort of, so the wheel's going to be going kind of through that line there. So what I'm going to do is just go down a little bit, and I'm going to cut a line across there, and then I'm going to take this off as well. So I'm going to leave this part on, because I'm frightened if I cut that off there it's going to weaken this. So I'm going to try and leave some of that on, and then cut a line across there. Then what I'm going to be doing from here is welding across another piece of pipe. Okay, so that's what we've got left of the frame. Obviously that's where the handlebars pivoted. So that's going to be the, it sounds a little bit sort of grindy because basically rather than it sitting on the bearings at the moment, because I've got all this taped up, it's sort of rolling around on the actual bar itself, so don't worry about that. So I've cut that off at a line. I've only sort of roughly done it. It's reasonably straight, but I'll need to sort of trim that up and just see how that fits in a moment. So basically the next thing to do is to attach the wheel to this, so I can actually see how things align and you know, the sort of the geometry of it. So that's the top bit of where the forks were. So all I'm going to do is weld a penny washer on top of there. So the reason I'm doing that is so I can see that it's absolutely centered all the way around. I already know it's level, so I just want to get that absolutely centered. This part doesn't have to be absolutely perfect, but I want to try and keep it in the centre if I can. So what I'll do now is just run a weld all the way around there and weld that washer onto the top. This does two things. One, it gives me a level platform to mount that onto here. The second thing it does is it stops the pole from going any further than it is at the moment. So it'll sit on, basically the pole sits on the back side of this washer if you like. And then get the nut, make sure it's the nut that fits the side that you know that you're wanting to bolt in. Now on some wheels what you can get is a left-handed thread on one side, so you need to make sure you've got the right nut. I'm speaking from experience here. And then put that in the top there. I don't know if you can see that, but basically what I've done is I've used the hole in the centre of the washer to centre the nut. Obviously the washer will already be welded on at this point, and then weld the nut on the top, and then I can basically then screw that into here so I can see the whole thing together. Then I can start to work out how I can form the tail to show the direction of the wind. So as you can see, what I've done is I've actually taken this the sort of shaft out of the frame, and I've taken the bearings out as well. Reason being is there was a lug here and a lug there which prevented the handlebars from rotating all the way around. So basically what that's meant is I've had to take this out to grind those lugs off so the thing will spin all the way around whilst it's you know, sort of weather vane. So what I need to do is now make sure that the top's perfectly level. Now I've welded that bit on, and weld the nut in place so that it can be welded, so I can cool it down, so basically none of the heat from the welding will go into the bearings and damage the bearings. So what I'll do is I'll weld it, get it all ready, and then make sure that it's cool, and then I can reassemble the whole thing together to make sure that you know, it's all in one piece and there's no sort of dirt in the bearings and there's no heat on the bearings, so it'll all be good. Okay, so I've formed the top. I will admit it was the second attempt. That was the first one, and when I measured it to make sure it was all lined up, it actually wasn't lined up, so I had to cut the first one off, and I've redone it again. I've taken all the bearings out, as I showed you. I've got the shaft out, and what I've done is I've put some copperies, which is copper based grease, and I've packed the bearings with that, so they're absolutely full of grease now. So as you can see, that's rotating quite nicely. One problem that I have seen is that the pipe is a slightly different size to a conduit pipe, so I may have to weld a piece of pipe on the top of the conduit so it's the right size for the inside of this. So that's basically going to be the direction thing, and as you can see it spins around quite easily now, and we've got a nut on there which the wheel will fit onto, which I'll show you now. So there you go, so there's the wheel bolted on the top. As you can see, it's all within alignment, so that's what's going to be on the top of the pole. Obviously we haven't got the cups at the end of here. As you can see, that's that spinning, and then this spins independently. And if you can see the nut in the middle there, this part doesn't actually move. So if you look at that, it's not moving with that, and also if I spin the wheel, it's also not spinning with that either. So as you can see, it all spins sort of, it all spins independently of each other, which is exactly what you want. So the next bit is I'm obviously going to have to start cutting some more off this, because if you can imagine, the cups are going to start here, so this is most certainly going to be in the way. So I need to start thinking about how I'm going to shape this to get the tail in. So that'll be the next job. Okay, so what I've decided to do is completely cut off the bit of part that was on there. I was sort of working it all out, and whichever way you looked at it, it wasn't going to work. So I've cut it off. So what I can do now is just weld on the tail on there. Now, what I've also done is bolted on the first cup. So as you can see, I've got 3 M6 bolts running through there with nylock nuts on the other side and some large penny washers. So that's basically what it's gonna look like when it's spinning. Okay, so thanks for watching Jim's allotment garden. I know we've not been doing much of the allotment this week, but obviously with the weather that we've had, it's actually -4 at the moment where I am. So it is pretty cold, but it's given us a chance to sort of crack on doing the weather vane, etc. So there'll be a little bit more of this coming up soon. But thank you for watching Jim's allotment. Please do subscribe, put any comments below, and I shall see you next time. Thank you, bye bye.